sustainability, energy efficiency,
and reducing our carbon footprint in mind.
Hi, we're back. This is Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Susanna Sagat, and
I'm Robert Winters.
welcome.
I think what we're going to speak about some in this segment, or this show, is just some recollections, more so than anything else, based on the fact that we had 4 major exits from the City Council. The last meeting last night on December 16th, City Council meeting marked the exit of long-term, 24 years on the City Council, Ken Reeves, and also Henrietta Davis, who's actually
Long-term also.
She's long-term also, and actually Henrietta served 26 years. I think it was 8 on the school committee and the next 18 on the City Council.
Mm-hmm.
Marjorie Decker, who, it's amazing, I think as Ken said, he still thinks of her as
Time flies.
the high school kid,
16
you know.
years, right?
But Marjorie actually finished up 14 years on the City
14.
Council. And then Minka vanBeuzekom, who completed 1 term, 2 years on the City Council. And it was a pretty remarkable evening up at City Hall. There was a lot of, thanking of everybody and looking back. It was especially touching how each of the exiting councillors, Tim Toomey was the one who sort of took the rostrum and sort of was the master of ceremonies of sorts. But then he would invite each of them up to the microphone, and then they would sort of thank all their colleagues and, offer a few words of advice and recollection. It was really moving. I was amazed, actually. And I've been at a few of these. I mean, I was there when Catherine Triantafilou left, when Kathy Bourne left, when Sheila Russell left, and others as well. Certainly,
This was a lot of them leaving at once.
That's right, and it's not the first time we had such a massive turnover. I think in 1989 there were 4. After the 1989 election, they began the next term with 4 new councillors. I'm pretty sure that was also the case after the 1993 election. There were 4 new councillors. So anyway, it was an interesting evening. So
Did they have any good advice?
they had some especially good advice. It's not. I don't know that I'm going to still do I have to do some more of my homework to sort of write down some of the highlights of it. But I thought one of the things we could do tonight here is just to sort of mention a few things that they said, and as well as some other recollections. Sort of going back there. I think actually the one thing that I liked the most was what things that Ken Reeves said in addressing all of his colleagues, and basically saying that he likes to see the God in everyone.
That's nice.
And he used that as a theme in how he spoke to and about each of his colleagues. He was actually pretty funny when he said to Councillor Kelly, who they've become really good friends in recent years, but he did look at him and he says, it took me a while to see the God in you. But he was poetic as always.
As always,
and
yeah.
it was really a good night. So anyway, I was jotting down some notes after that meeting, and then this morning about that. I thought I'd mention a few things here.
Oh, good.
So one of the funny things, I don't know, funny or crazy things, is that I first began going up to City Hall as a sort of a citizen viewer of things. It's not like I'm there every week or anything, but I'm there a lot of the times. And I was actually there before Ken Reeves became a city councilor.
You were there before TV shows.
I was there around the time of The Wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Before it was broadcast on TV.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I can actually say that I remember Ken Reeves before he was a city councilor, coming up to city councilor as an activist, and my recollections were, and this is sort of the mid to late 1980s, about he had a loud, commanding presence as a public speaker. So before he became an elected official, that's it was. One thing is actually Ken that pointed out at the meeting last night, which I knew about, a lot of people knew about, was that his mentor, political mentor, was actually Al Vellucci, right? And I actually heard stories from Al Vellucci's grandsons of Ken coming over to the Vellucci house and sort of learning at Grandpa's knee, you know. I think Ken actually, during the meeting last night, he actually turned up on the wall as a portrait of Al Vellucci. Interestingly, as you face the front of the room, there's Al Vellucci on one and Ken Reeves on the other, right? You know, he actually just sort of turned to the Al Vellucci portrait and said, you know, how he, you know, and it made note of the fact that he was first encouraged to go into political life by Al Vellucci.
He was always very kind to me too.
Yeah.
He was Cambridge.
Yep.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
A Cambridge politician at his best.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking back, you know, I remember when, after Ken joined the council after the 1989 election, there's a running joke, this gag has gone on for a long, long time, which is that, you know, the rule is that in the absence of, if they haven't been able to successfully elect a mayor, the most senior member serves as mayor until such time as the mayor has been elected.
Right.
So in years gone by, that might have been somebody like Frank Duhay or Al Vellucci. But after a time, it actually became Ken Reeves. And the only reason why it was Ken Reeves was because Ken Reeves and Tim Toomey were elected together in 1989. But because of the way the alphabet works, R comes
Reeves
before
comes
T.
before
So
Toomey.
he was sworn in
Yeah.
first. So he became the senior member. So anyway, for the record, Tim Toomey is now the senior member. And should there be no election of the mayor, though I think it will probably happen on the first ballot this
You
time.
do?
That's my sense. I think so.
Who's it going to be?
I'm not saying. But
When's the first meeting?
the first meeting I think
January
is January 6th. Yeah, and it's at 10
And you
a.m.
think it's going to
the
happen
inaugural.
right then?
I think so.
That first meeting?
If it doesn't happen right then, it'll probably get settled on a second ballot after.
Oh, now you're
some
changing your
people.
ways.
No, I think it should be on the first ballot. You know. There are very few people in the running this time because it's so many new faces. So I think that it'll be settled pretty quickly. But I remember during Councillor Reeves's Mayor Reeves's first term as mayor, just sort of bullet points here.
Yeah.
I think it was during that period, you know, there's some things that are now Cambridge institutions that he played a pivotal role in establishing.
Yeah.
There was, well, we haven't had the central, I guess we revived the Central Square World's Fair, but, you know, he played a pivotal role in getting that kick-started. The Cambridge Community Chorus, he was instrumental in getting that to happen. Just up the street from us here, where the former Joy of Movement Center is located, is now the dance complex. He played an essential role in facilitating the transition there so that they could exist. For hopefully forevermore. And I think, you know, from my point of view, the top thing by far is that, you know, we're sitting here in Central Square right now. Central Square was for several decades kind of the neglected child of Cambridge. You know, it was getting more and more run down. It was problematic in more ways than you can imagine. And it was actually Councillor Reeves who stepped up and drew attention to Central Square. In the early days, I think it was around maybe 1993 or 4, he put together what was called the Committee to Enhance and Promote Central Square Now, with an exclamation point. He often creates titles that way.
Yeah, they were great titles.
And that kind of got the ball rolling, which led to the appointment of a Central Square Committee, which I served on. That made the recommendations to widen the sidewalks, to allow, and it's interesting, all these little things that we spoke about in sort of theoretical terms have now facilitated things like the sidewalk dining, which is becoming the norm in Central Square. That was all what everybody had hoped would happen, and it's happened, right? But I don't think that this attention would have happened had it not been for Councillor Reeves' focus on Central Square at a time when nobody else was actually bringing such attention. You know, there are many other things that grew out of that period, but certainly that focus on Central Square, which has come and it's gone and now it's come back again, he's really been sort of the hand on the wheel to you know, just to motivate people. If nothing else, just to get people going, for property owners, business owners, residents to come together to sort of make something happen. And that's been something that I think everybody owes him a tremendous thank you for that. On a political side, after his first term, he was elected mayor the second time, and it was interesting because this was back in the days when the Cambridge Civic Association was sort of a very, very major thing. And for the second term, he was elected without any votes for the CCA. It was a very sort of politically controversial thing at the time, where 4 of the non-CCA councillors voted with him to elect him, which arguably was the first big break with of the grand coalition of the Cambridge Civic Association. That would have been 1993, 5. I don't even remember right now, but
I think it was 3.
I think it was 3, or at the beginning of '94. Of course, other things would then lead to the demise of the CCA as well. They ended rent control, which had been a pivotal issue for them. Question 9 was in 1994, and so it was phased out over the next 2 years as a result too. But from a political point of view, that was sort of Ken Reeves becoming very much his own man, very much an independent voice, and that remained true forevermore for his entire term on the city council. I'm actually, and I wrote this on a website, I'll say it again here too, which is that for at least the last decade and a half of his time on the city council, and again as a chronic council watcher, I'd have to say he was the person always who provided perspective on the city council. People would sort of come in with some wild idea, and he'd be the one who'd say, well, let me tell you the way this has been. We talked about this back in 1990 so-and-so. This is what the issues were. And he was the guy who you could count on for kind of putting things straight. And honestly, that's going to be a big, big challenge to fill that gap in the coming term, is to who's going to, I mean, there are some other people who've been like Denise and Tim and David Marr who will, I'm sure, step up to the plate, but this is absolutely an important role that has to be filled. Let's see, some other things I'd say is, let me say something about Ken Reeves as a friend. Not necessarily as my friend. We've had sort of a on and off again relationship, to say the least. But he became very, very good close friends with former city councillor Bill Walsh after he left the city council. And so much so that when Bill Walsh passed away several years ago, I went to the funeral, and Ken Reeves delivered remarks at the funeral, in addition to quite a few other people. But his remarks were really touching, and he told the stories of as a friend and a former colleague, when Bill Walsh, as many of you know, had to actually serve time in prison. Ken Reeves actually drove him there. Drove him, I think it was down in, I forget, was it New Jersey or somewhere way down there. And he told a funny story at the funeral about how when he arrived there, they kind of looked at Bill Walsh and thought Bill Walsh was the one who had driven Ken there to be delivered to the prison. So anyway,
So did he give any recommendations or any advice to people? Ken, last night?
He did. I think what he was primarily doing was offering more perspective on things that he wants. I'll have to sort of go through the tape to sort of mark him down to be more specific about that. But he spoke like a poet, actually, at the meeting. It wasn't just a matter of how he chooses to see the God in the people around him, but he had really good things to say about all of his colleagues. And he ended by basically saying he has no regrets whatsoever. And I thought it was a really class act all around.
Yeah, I'm really sorry I missed it.
Yeah, well, the thing is that through the miracle of technology, you can watch it online.
I know, but being there is much nicer.
Yeah, it was. Actually, it was really quite touching, actually. And I'll show one thing I will say about this is one of the unsung heroes of City Hall, and certainly around the City Council office, is Sandy Albano. Sandy is she's sort of the head of the staff of the City Council office. And Ken said something which was remarkable. He said, she was funny, he said, why would anybody with such a beautiful name like Alessandro choose to be called Sandy. Right. But during the meeting, when it was pretty clear, it was a pretty emotional time for Ken, that Sandy Albano was there with her hands on his shoulders, just sort of making him right. And I thought, well, that's a role that, you know, the political people don't see, don't appreciate. These are human beings, and
Oh, yeah.
and you know, when you work with somebody for more than a couple decades, you know, you develop some pretty strong relationships, and all of that was really out there for everyone to see last night. It was really something. I could certainly say more, but I'm going to also say something about some of the other councillors who were leaving. So Mayor Henrietta Davis, this was also her last meeting, and you know, she, as I said earlier, she served 8 years on the school committee and 18 on the city council. She was elected in 1995, succeeding Jonathan Myers. She sort of became effectively the Cambridgeport councillor. Not that anybody's really a neighborhood councillor exactly, but that was effectively true. And I was thinking back, I remembered how back during late 80s, like 89, thereabouts, I was on this recycling committee. This was before it was turned into a city program, and we would invite people to come to our meetings, and it was kind of hard back then. You know, Cambridge wasn't sort of all, nowadays it's green city, environmentalist, this and that and the other, but back then it really wasn't. And it was actually Henrietta Davis who may have been the first elected official to come to our recycling meeting. So it's not at all surprising that she's the one who grew into be the greenest of all councillors. Though I suppose Minka vanBeuzekom gave her a good run for the money for that title in the last 2 years. But she actually came to our recycling meetings back in the late 80s, early 90s. You know, so another thing I was noting was that Henrietta has been an advocate for what they call LEED standards, or green building standards, for city-owned buildings, really for all buildings, but the ones the city controls are the city-owned buildings. And she's been advocating for that, as I like to say, long before it was in fashion. And in the day when, in fact, there was significant costs, additional costs associated with building a green building. But she was insistent, and she got her way, and now it's becoming pretty much the norm. So in that regard, she was really kind of setting a tremendous standard. Interestingly, in this last meeting, when they announced the appointments to this net zero task force, one of the appointees will be citizen Henrietta Davis. So we will continue to see her serving in that role very, very soon. Another of the people who are leaving the city council, but not leaving elected office, is Marjorie Decker. As she has now, last year, it's been a year, I guess, yeah, she was elected to succeed Alice Wolf as state representative. And that district is like, it's wholly within Cambridge.
Right, it's an important seat because it's the only one in Cambridge that only represents Cambridge.
That's exactly right.
We have many more representatives, but they all represent other communities too. I mean,
Yeah.
we think they're all doing a good job, but hers is right in the middle, and it's only Cambridge.
That's right, that's right. Now, Marjorie first ran in 1999, and I'll say, because those were back in the days when I was foolish enough to be a candidate myself. Marjorie, initially, she sort of came up as sort of having a little bit of an angry streak, you know. I'm coming in here, a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. And, I don't think she ever completely lost that. I mean, she could be very combative, but I tell you, it's been an interesting thing watching her.
Some people call that passionate.
I actually call that passionate. And I've actually made the comment that the kind of passion and advocacy that she has shown on many issues, especially for people most in need, that passion, I think, will be carried forward by some of the newly elected councillors. This is just an impression I have.
Now, just a totally weird thing to say is that, that's exactly right. Because she's a woman, it's more combative, and those are more the terms that people use. If it had been a man, they might have used passionate.
Oh,
But the problem, the thing we have now is that this council will only have one woman,
And that's going to be tough.
So that is a big change.
That
So
is.
there'll be a lot of passionate people because there won't be that many women to be.
Well, which will actually put Denise Simmons in a rather interesting role where she can sort of be the, you know, the voice of reason. Hopefully she can kind of kick the boys in line.
Well,
I hope,
if we're
yeah.
trying to have proportional representation on the council, she was representing 50% of the people, 53% of the people, however many there are.
That's right. That's right. So it'll
she
be an
has
interesting role
she's carrying
to
a
fill.
weight.
Yeah, it was
But
interesting.
anyway, let's go back to Marjorie because I don't
Okay,
want her
okay.
to
All right,
lose
yeah.
the.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, she was passionate.
Yeah,
She,
absolutely.
and she still is.
And absolutely is. And actually she has grown and grown and grown. Is really quite an interesting political figure now. Actually, one other thing I'd say about Marjorie, she actually ran for state rep once before. I remember this because she ran against Paul DeMarcus. And I remember a lot of the people in the political establishment gave her grief for this. How dare you run against an incumbent? And I thought, why are you giving her grief? I wrote her a check. I said, good for her. You know, this is what democracy is about. You know, and I thought it was wonderful. Of course, I think the following year, Paul DeMarcus left office. He quit.
yeah.
Well, that didn't make a lot of sense. But Marjorie played a pivotal role, certainly in the election of mayors, all of her times there. And I'd have to say over the last, it's either 4 or 6 years, had really distinguished herself as the chair of the Finance Committee. So she became sort of, in a sense, one of the voices of perspective when people would come in and say, oh, I think we should do this, or let's just take some of that free cash that we've got here that give us all these AAA bond ratings, and let's go, you know, buy a building or fund a new program or whatever. And she would be the one who would actually say, hold on, everybody. Think about the financial implications of the things that you're proposing. And, you know, I thought that was a sign of great maturity as an elected official.
And she took the hearings out of City Hall.
And she definitely, made a roadshow.
She brought it to
Yep.
the people.
She absolutely did. So, good job, basically, after 14 years.
And something else I think she did, I could be wrong, but I think she's the one who extended street cleaning until the end of December.
Oh, that's not true.
Who was it?
That was an order from Councillor Davis.
Was it?
That's right.
For me,
I was thinking about giving
I'm thinking it was Marjorie.
No, that was Henrietta. I don't, please.
I think it's a good thing.
I
Gets
don't know,
rid of all those leaves, lets
yeah,
the snow plows go nicer.
I know.
Okay, this is a sensitive topic.
No,
I
it's
can
not. It's
tell.
okay. I forgive her for that.
Well, I've been thanking Marjorie all these years, so
All right.
Henrietta, thank you.
A good political person receives those thanks graciously. And the last person is the one of the shortest tenure was Minka vanBeuzekom, who only served for the one term. And I think there was indications that she may be back. Certainly, after losing a very, very close election and asking for the recount, it's certainly it is certain that she will remain active in civic life in one way or another. That's without a doubt. She's been actively involved in things around Cambridge, especially environmental things, since I first met her as a member of a group called the Cambridge Environmental Citizens Organization, or Cambridge ECO, back in, I believe, 1990.
Wow.
So
You've been around.
I know, I'm getting up in years, but we go back a ways. She may very well come around again as a candidate in future years, and time will tell. There's always a possibility that people leave office to seek another job or whatever, and she's actually in line to be the replacement for 4 of the current 9 councillors, should there be a vacancy. So she may come back before you know it. You can never tell.
Trying to get rid of them already.
No. I'm just sort of pointing out that
get
she's
sworn in.
She's that's right. But she's sitting there, and she's not far from the pulse
Don't
of
encourage
elected
her.
life. All right.
Let people settle in first.
Yeah. Anyway, a few other notes sort of as we sort of wind it down here. I just wanted to say that since there were 4 individuals that we were speaking of, one little note that I wrote to myself here was that for a long time now, at least 10 years, no matter how many what disagreements people, activists or others, may have had with them, the truth is that Councillor Reeves, Councillor Davis, and Councillor Decker all could always be counted on to vote rationally and sensibly on matters of significance. And sometimes,
Thoughtful people.
right, and sometimes bravely in ways that were going against what some of the loudest voices were demanding, but they knew best. They really did know best, and they were willing to take the heat on, as I say, in matters of significance. So whether that was sort of the biggest vote that a city councilor can take is in the selection of a city manager. They were steadfast, and in my opinion, voting the right way in all matters. And it was interesting, actually, Marjorie especially, to sort of talk about, some of the criticism that they received for the selection of Richie Rossi as manager, and just made it absolutely clear this was a transparent process as you could have imagined. And she was forthright about it, and I appreciated that a lot. So.
And even though we brought up here a lot of issues that they all championed, there's still so many more that they championed. I mean, Ken with the Baby U University, and Marjorie with childcare and daycare, and Henrietta with elder issues. And it's like really caring for the population and finding where the problems were and really trying to work with people to come up with solutions. They were all of their terms were really admirable.
I completely agree.
And we're not even touching a lot of the things that they did that if they watched the show, they would be saying, oh, they didn't mention this, they didn't mention this. There are so many things we did not mention.
We'll just put it on a tape and we'll roll it really, really fast at the end in the credits, right?
No, but a lot of what Cambridge is because of work that they did, and
Absolutely.
we thank them for it.
That's right. So we're just about out of time here, but I'd say they're not going away. We'll be seeing them around town. So anyway, until next time.
This is Cambridge Inside.